Thanks for joining me, David. It's great having you here. We're
Oh,
going to
awesome
talk
being
about Professors at Play and all the books you have done with us. For those of you who don't know, Professors at Play is a great partner organization for Play Story Press. We're working together to think about the great ways to share work and knowledge out there through open access channels. And I'd love, David's one of the co-founders of Professors at Play and one of the co-editors of each of the books that you all published with us. So I'd like to tee it off to you to introduce yourself and sort of maybe start with the concept of Professors at Play.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. Yeah, I mean it's been awesome. Professors at Play was on ETC Press, and we're happy to move over to Play Story Press. I think that what we do with Professors at Play is really in alignment with Play Story, which is,
Mm-hmm.
we are trying to help get information and encouragement and community out for, really the scholarly community. So roll back, prior to COVID, right before COVID. A colleague of mine and I, Lisa Forbes, who was we were both at the University of Colorado Denver at the time. We're just kicking around ideas about, how to use play in the classroom. I had come out of the game studies world and spent a lot of time studying video games and really the game side of stuff. I'd written a book on MIT Press with John Sharp called Fun Tasting Games, which was about the aesthetics of games. And all this was kind of like out there, and I was talking a lot about how play could, make the workplace better. And then I met Lisa, and she was on a slightly different track. She was trying to figure out how to make teaching and life more enlivened. And Lisa is a mental health counselor, so she was really interested. And I always say the heart of the matter. So we kind of started collaborating and just kicking around some ideas, and then we met a few people and set up an email list. And the email list, or it was a Google list, I'm sorry, was just for a half dozen people that we knew interested in this topic of play and education in higher education. And then COVID struck. And Lisa had written an article for an outlet that was basically describing her journey as becoming a playful professor and how it re-enlivened her teaching and, got her excited. And she started researching play. And that really struck a nerve, Drew. It struck a nerve with all of the faculty, as you remember, who had been foisted
Right.
into the wilds of the online world. And so people were super curious about engagement. So our little list all of a sudden exploded into hundreds of people. And early on, we started organizing little workshops that we called Playposiums. And we heard a big need. The big need from
Mm-hmm.
the people that we were talking to was we're professors, we're instructional designers, we're administrators, we all work in and around higher ed or corporate training, and we just don't know how to do this. We don't know what this teaching with play means. And I'm an academic. I mean, my initial urge is to go to first principles in theory, but that's not really how you support someone who's just, someone who comes to you and says, "Hey, I want to play soccer," and then you start saying, "Well, soccer was a social construction of sports and competition." You go, "Here's a ball, kick it," right? And so it's a funny way of saying we realized early on that we needed to serve the community. So
Mm-hmm.
we called up you, and you agreed to publish what became the first Professors at Play playbook, which was really an introduction to the concept of how do you play in higher education. And we structured the book around a model that we had come up with that was sort of like the pyramid of play, we called it, that just
Mm-hmm.
suggested that you engage play in the classroom first as a playful person, second kind of through like lightweight activities, connection formers we called them, or icebreakers. Then you start getting into what more looks like the gamification world, where the play is connected specifically to learning outcomes. And at the top of the pyramid was whole course play, the holy grail, like that you'd go to Starfleet Academy and everything would be play all day long. Or maybe it would be, I don't know, what's that Orson Card Scott book, Ender's Game. It'd
Ender's
be Ender's
Game.
Game. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
We didn't talk about that. We thought maybe. And we reached out to our community that by then was, 600 people, and we said, "Hey, community, what techniques have you been using?" So we brought all
Mm-hmm.
this material together, and we published the Professors at Play playbook. Very excited about that book because it did a couple of things at once. One is it showed the wide range of interest and application of play in higher education. We had people from veterinarian schools, people from business schools, people from, nursing schools, people from education, people from the arts, all over the place contributing all kinds of techniques, just wonderful, wonderful stuff. It was great to see that it was a shared cause and there was a lot of success out there. It also showed the range of interventions. It wasn't like a one size fits all of play to
Right.
education. And so, even though there was some context and some theory and some research to kind of bound the project, the initial playbook was really, I like to think of it as Julia Child's The Way to Cook. It was just like, here's a bunch of recipes, give them a try, make up your own, get in the kitchen and make something happen. So, to kind of put a button on that big long monologue, Professors at Play started as a community of kind of like-minded professors who just really saw that there was something missing in their teachers, something missing in their classroom, something missing in higher ed, and Play seemed to hold the answer. And we started the community to kind of have that conversation, and then the technique book, the first technique book, came out really as an answer to the question, how do I do this? And so it's been a big success. I think it was one of the most downloaded books on
Yeah.
ETC and maybe in PSP. And again, I take pride in that, but I think mostly it's just like the need was there. There was really a lot of need. One last thing I just kind of say to scope this is, the world of play science, play research is really wide. There's lots and lots of stuff out there.
Right.
What you'll find out though is that most play and education research is around kid play, like K-12, kind of, how does kid development work? There's a little bit of emerging stuff around kind of play in the workplace, but there just wasn't much about how do you play inside the ivory tower. So when I think about professors at play, it's less professors who talk about play. It really is literally professors at play. These are professors that want to play in their teaching, ideally in their research and their scholarship, but really we are interested in just trying to tackle the problem of how do you make higher ed a more playful place.
Yeah, and what I love that, like, to dig a little, connect that to some of the stuff that came out of the first book, is like you said, you tried to give it a little context with like a pyramid that you created. You wouldn't mind speaking a little bit more of that, like that playful pyramid, and how that kind of helped shape what came into the book to help us like glean the lessons out of what everybody was sharing
Yeah,
with the community.
sure. I'm trying to think. This is quite a while ago, but as I recall, Lisa and I were really just looking for. Excuse me. Lisa and I were just looking for a organizational schema to help us, sort all these techniques into different categories. Because one thing that we discovered early on was when people said, I want to bring more play into my classroom, they almost always meant icebreakers, right? They almost always meant a class activity that you start off to get students engaged so that they'll listen to your boring lecture. And if it wasn't that, then it was straight to gamification, right? It was straight to how do I use play to get them to, understand these complicated concepts. So the pyramid was really structured to kind of allow people to understand that there are different entry points and that the base entry point, and I think this still might not have been super clear, the base of the pyramid is to be a playful person. I mean, we always thought it would be really disingenuous to be like, students, you shall now play these games that will increase your thing, but I'm not going to do it. I
Right.
refuse to dilute my professorial authority with mere play. So we're saying, you need to be playful. And there wasn't a lot in the book about this, but, we've talked about it. And being a playful professor doesn't mean showing up in a clown suit or having a wacky tie every day. I mean, it's really kind of authentically, have you explored your own playfulness? Have you unlocked play in your life? Are you being vulnerable enough in the classroom to let students see you in a
Mm.
playful pose? Are you confident enough in your own academic, basis that you're willing to play with your students, to let them question you, to not be the sage on the stage? And so I think that was a big part of it. And then on top of that, we're like, oh yeah, open classes with playful icebreakers. Take brain breaks and play. I mean, there's all kinds of great priming, lots of good outcomes from that. And absolutely,
Hmm.
there's tons and tons of great evidence about scenario based learning, play based learning, how effective it can be, how engaging it can be. You look at even things like learning from the past, the history games. There's so much there. And then finally, we
Mm.
just threw on the top of the pyramid whole course play. We did mean things like playing with the past. We did mean games that you play the whole class. But I think we were also really trying to articulate an aspiration, which was that if you could break out of the kind of a lot of the received structures of education and really started to question what education is for and how it serves the individual, that you would make a playful classroom that would be almost unrecognizable to
Mm.
the current academy. And then, again, we didn't articulate that, but I think that our intuition was just to say, like, there is a peak, right? We're not there,
Right.
but there is
Right.
something there that you could get to.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was really interesting too, building on how the whole community started forming, that your next book hit a hot topic. And it was a bit shorter, but it was like all coming out around AI, Purpose of Play AI handbook. Because, that kind of just ChatGPT hit and just we all are like, whoa, our lives are different now. And that
Yeah,
you all kind of jumped on, did a nice job kind of contextualizing that from a playful lens.
was that the second one? Or was the second one the online playbook? I've lost track of the sequence. I think you're
I
right.
think the I think because it was so much shorter, you're like, we did this quick
Yeah,
one
yeah,
for AI, and we're
yeah, yeah,
I think you'd started the online book first, and the AI was just so hot at the moment. You're like,
yeah,
hey, we've got something.
yeah. So Drew, thanks for editorial guidance, keeping things straight, and I clearly need this. Yeah. So the Professors that Play AI playbook, it was kind of like a one shot. It's a short book.
Yeah.
Um, it's all published in color because we just want to put all these things in there, and really it was a provocation, right? I mean, nominally it was a techniques book, but how can you have techniques when AI is,
Oh, right.
is racing ahead? So it was a provocation that said, we get AI is scary, we get that AI is disruptive, and we can't think of a better place to play than in scary, disruptive fields, right? And so,
Yeah.
we just explored a lot of AI tools and presented a lot of ideas about how one might actually play with these tools. And so, for example, and again, the ethical stuff hadn't really kind of started to rise as much.
Right.
So there's not a lot of that addressed, but we take something like the tool Suno, which allows you to, type in a prompt or some lyrics and it makes a song, right? And we could go quickly and vigorously into the ethical considerations of stealing music or the soullessness of music.
Right.
But the point of that activity was like, hey, have students do introductions through song. And I did this in my class. I offered students, hey, do your online course discussion as a song. I learned more about the students that chose to do that than I ever have in a written thing.
Mm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
the style of music they chose, what the lyrics said, they were really,
Mm-hmm.
really moving introductions. And so I think, yeah, that sort of sidesteps the ethical issues, but I tell you, as a playful implementation of AI, it was just like, okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Right.
Now, the play is opening up thinking and curiosity and vulnerability and all these wonderful human qualities we're striving for in higher ed. So yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
the AI playbook's still out there. I think it's an incredibly important marker because we did it very quickly. We did it at moment in time, and because
Yeah.
PSP has such a great publishing model, it wasn't like we had to spend 6 months waiting for the information to get out of date before it was in press. I think that the information is out of date, but I think it is a very, very useful artifact because I'm very proud of the fact that, as far as I know, that was the first
Yeah.
publication about
Same here.
AI and teaching, playful AI and teaching that anyone of any size did. And so yeah, so it's a wonderful artifact. And again, since everything on PSP is downloadable for free, you can go see for yourself. I'm not worried about, like I don't, it doesn't have to exist in the libraries for all time, but it's a wonderful point in time artifact.
Yeah. So then, like, I think across time you were working on your online playbook because similarly, like, oh, we had this pandemic thing happen. All of us got thrown in the deep end, and so like let's unpack that as like ways to be playful in a different sphere, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we did the first techniques book, I mean, there was some thought that like, oh, maybe we do this as a every other year anthology, just kind of, like this
Mm.
folkways collection of techniques that are, in current. It'd be a nice library of stuff. I think that Lisa and I both kind of had a shared kind of like, well, I don't know, like we're not the techniques people, like like we were never
Ah.
recipe collectors, and at the same, so we were kind of interested in like, what does play mean? How does play change lives? How does play really transform teaching? What are the underlying
Mm.
principles? I think, I'll let Lisa speak to the work that she's been doing, but I've been working very much on how do you actually, what's the design language of playful pedagogy? Like, how do you actually go about creating this stuff other than just it pops out of your head full
Mm-hmm.
form, like lightning from Moses's head or something. Um, The online playbook, well, it's another techniques book. There was a simultaneous recognition of the fact that um, the number one question people had after the first playbook was, how do you do this online? And I've been working in online education for most of my career, and I was just kind of like, well, I don't know, you just convert the activities to online. I was very kind of personally dismissive. But I realized that wasn't fair. So we went ahead and we reran the script on the first playbook, went back to the community. This time we changed the criteria a little bit. The first playbook is you had to only submit techniques that you had tried in the classroom. It was really important to us that there was an authenticity to the experience of like, I've done this and it worked. The online playbook, since it was a little more Wild West, we were like, well, it can be stuff you've tried, or it can just be stuff that you think that would be fun. So we loaded up the playbook with tons of new techniques, more or less organized along the same kind of pyramid of play. And again, it's a great collection. In a way, it's very non-systematic and messy because it's not based on any discipline. It's not based on any specific approach. It's just a collection of ideas and techniques that people have used. And I think it's a very successful book. I don't know that it really hit the nerve that the original playbook did, but I do think it's a really great book for helping people think through online. And let me just do a kind of a side note on that. Like I said, I've worked in online education most of my career, and I'm well aware of the hoary professor's attitude about online, which is it's an inferior form of what I do in the classroom. And to be honest with you, the way a lot of online is done, that's 100% true, right? I mean, even
Right.
this conversation, Drew, it would be so much preferable to do it in person if it was logistically possible. So I think that the online playbook also served this other ulterior motive of disrupting people's notions of what you can do in online learning. And that to me was the bigger message of the online playbook, which was, hey, if online sucks, it's because you're not trying hard enough. And it's not
Yeah.
just raw effort, it's not just, back-breaking, instructional design. It's, can you approach this with the spirit of curiosity? Can you approach this question of how do I make my class more engaging, more interesting, more meaningful, more, transformative through the lens of playing with the ideas, playing with the medium, playing with your students? So I think that book really kind of helps carry that message. So yeah, so that kind of makes the current set of books. I can say I am debating with my own rationale and reason here, but I think we're going to do a third playbook. And let me just see if you can
Okay.
guess. What's the big missing the big missing part of the higher ed target of teaching problems? Haven't we covered yet?
Well, no, it's so funny. I might dodge this a little because what was on my mind is like one of the things that you've done that you mentioned a little as workshops was come to full-on festivals in a way, or
Yeah.
playposiums.
Well, we'll get to
Um,
the Playposium, but that's not higher ed doesn't talk much
okay,
about it.
no,
What is higher ed constantly beating its head on against academically?
accreditation, professional
Yeah,
masters, lifelong learning.
close. The large lecture hall, right?
Oh, I got you.
So everybody knows the large lecture hall is an antique. It is not an effective way to deliver information. At best, it's Hello Dolly, where a professor comes and performs this wonderful performance for the 700th time. So, but economically, the large lecture hall is embedded in our financial model, so it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So, I am in the process of considering, against all reason, doing a professors at play large lecture playbook to be
Hmm.
like, how can we have fun with the large lecture hall? How can we bring the large lecture hall back to life? And so I
Mm.
think if we can do that, then I feel like we've kind of covered most of the major challenges of in the concept of higher ed teaching. But then, yeah, I don't know. We need to do a Playposium book of how do you do playful events. We need to do a playful student services book of how do you engage, the playful campus. I mean, we could do this forever. So.
Yeah, because that was the other thing when I started thinking about it after we were talking about it. It's like higher ed always is focused around like how on an administrative level, it's like how do we make the university relevant to the culture to the because right now, at least stateside, and maybe even worldwide, like higher ed's part of the culture wars where it's like it's a problem, it's something
Yeah.
that needs to be changed, and so it's like how does higher ed show that it matters and should be a part of our lives, as
Yeah,
opposed
yeah,
to unattainable, too expensive, all that stuff.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of ironic, isn't it, that when I see play, when you see play in the university, you see professors and you see students lit up in the ways that we say that higher ed can do.
Right.
They're engaged in their
Exactly.
projects. They're excited about the content. They're engaged with each other. They're playing together. And so we know play is this remarkable thing that should be a part of education. I won't get into it now, but I even have this kind of sense that play and learning may actually be the same thing. They may just be different aspects of it. But at the time that we need play the most, our administrative stance is we've got to get as serious as F. We have to be career focused. We have to be a machine that generates, employable diplomas. And in a way, it's like the machine is crushing the product, you know. And I don't know how to bridge that gap. I mean, it's not like I think our administrators are bad. I think they're facing the world that is out there. But I think from the professoriate, we're like going, you ask us to transform lives. You ask us to bring people out as thinking, creative, productive citizens. But you keep handing me a bag of nails, and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Mhm.
So it's tough. It's a tough, tough, tough situation. I've chosen which side I'm on. I'm on the side of like, let's make it more fun.
Yeah, yeah. So like coming back, outside of books, it'd be interesting, like you're saying, not only like a playposium of how to do playful events, but do you ever? As I have yet to attend one. That's on me because I want to. But
Good, good.
like, what do you think of as terms of like what sort of spurred you to go from these little workshops to like no, it's a full on like annual event where we get a lot of people together.
Yeah, the first event Lisa and I did was during COVID, and we decided to call it a Playposium, in part because I think we were never satisfied walking in somebody else's footsteps. We're like, we're going to make up our own stuff, and the goofier the better. So we called it a Playposium, but from day one, we really wanted to like disrupt the traditional kind of conference, kind of approach, and with submitted papers, review, and everything. And it's not that there's anything bad about that. There's just plenty of
Right.
that, and so the first two Playposiums were online because it was COVID. The first one was really just a Zoom conference. We did it really quick during COVID, and we brought in all kinds of cool people, and I think that it was an important convening point because everybody was at home, and it was nice to know that play was a
Yeah.
solution to a lot of this disconnection. Our second Playposium was a little bit more fun. We shipped mystery boxes off to everyone. We had boxes printed up, and we sent all this junk to people and printed pins. And it was Drew, you and I think share that. We have come somewhat from the kind of the corporate side where it's not unusual to get swag. Higher ed doesn't have
Right.
enough cool swag unless you're an undergraduate at admissions. So we've made all this professors at play swag, just silly stuff. And there was a lot more lightness in the program. But we always had this dream to do it in person. So several years ago, we were able to do our first in person at the ASU California Center in
Mm.
LA. And Dr. Stuart Brown came, and it was just remarkable. And you had a group of 120, 130 people, and it was so much fun. And that's where we our intuition started to start to appear, and actually some principles like what is a playposium. And so really people say, is a playposium, is it a workshop? No. Is it a symposium? No. Is it a conference? No. It's a magpie collection of all the best parts. So I would say this about a playposium, some of the core principles. The first is that it's place based. We are really intent that every time we offer a playposium, that it's in a place and we respond to the place. And so, I was just talking to a friend the other day, and I'm like going, I can remember some really amazing and just transformational conference papers, and I have to really struggle to remember what city I was in when I heard them. You know,
Mm.
it's like,
Mm.
the conference room carpet is the same in every hotel and every,
Oh, right. Yeah.
it's just
Liminal
like,
spaces.
yeah,
It's the
they
back
are, they are.
rooms.
So it's totally, yeah. Academic conferences are back rooms, yes. And so number one is playposiums have to be place based. So we were in LA. We went to this bar, the Golden Gopher, where they'd filmed part of a Taylor Swift video. We were in the ASU centers, the old Hearst building, so we had people typing poems, and we really tried to be like LA, talk about LA, be in the city, do city stuff. It was really fun. The next Playposium we did, of course, our in-person Playposium was in the mountains in Colorado at the DU Kennedy
Oh,
Mountain
great.
campus. So all of a sudden, we switched from downtown LA to, hey man, this is mountain. People were sleeping in bunks and campfires, and I had one person for that particular Playposium. They were so worried. They said, "I haven't slept in a room with another adult other than my husband for 40 years." And I was kind of like, I don't know what to tell you. That's what the accommodations are. And she had a great time, right? So I was like, so
Right.
anyway, rule number one of Playposium is a place based. The second rule of Playposium is, kind of less talking, more doing. So, or the way I'd like to say it is like, to me, a Playposium is give people something to talk about and then give them time to talk. So everyone always says
Oh,
the best part of a conference is, the after hours. I'm like, well, why don't you make less conference and more after hours, right? And
mm,
so, I think we've really successfully encouraged our presenters away from reading, away from presentations, more interaction, more community building, and I think that's been good. And I think the third thing is pretty self-evident is that, a Playposium is playful. I mean, lots
right.
of opportunities for play. And so our next Playposium is going to be in the University of Exeter in Southwest England. And so, what's more English than a pub crawl? Well, we're not, so why do a pub crawl when you could do a pub crawl of ideas? So we took the conference format, and one of the days, basically, people are going to wander around Exeter getting lunch or snacks or drinks or whatever, and at each stop, there's different speakers. And so, we're really trying to be like, hey, let's pour into the community and do our talks in public and, our
Mm,
workshops. And so again, it's like place-based, it's like something to talk about, something to talk with, and so the Playposium itself has become a really remarkable, wonderful community of folks, and we've been building that
yeah.
idea out with help from the National Institute for Play, and certainly with partners like University of Exeter and University of Denver. So we're super excited to keep moving that format forward. So that's another part of Professors at Play, and I hope to start doing some publications based on the Playposiums, just so there's like a
Hmm.
yearbook or a stories from the
Yeah. Sounds
Playposium.
fair.
That's
Yeah.
we didn't do it. We have some of the material from last year, so we may do a prototype stories from the Playposium on Play Story Press this summer.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that'd be a wonderful way to like wrap it up. Do you have any like final thoughts on the books, Professors of Play? Anything else you want? Any words of wisdom from the Professor of Fun?
Wow, I'm not good at final thoughts. I'm like, you know, what's next is always like I guess I'll say my final words, which I also think are words of wisdom, is the thing that I think about the most and these days is that, we've made a lot of headway in terms of getting people to accept that play is an important part of society. It's an important part of adult life. It ought to be an important part of higher education. I think there's a growing advocacy for that and a growing understanding for that, and lots of good people working on that. I think that what is next is like, what the hell is play? It's like, I think we all know it in our heart, but if you're a professor and you're trying to design it, if you're a community organizer and you're trying to figure out how to do activities, if you're a corporate
Mm,
trainer and you're trying to figure out how to make your workshops more playful, um, short of techniques, just throwing techniques at the problem, what does play mean? And how does it work? And what counts as play and what doesn't count as play? And what's healthy play and what's potentially unhealthy play?
okay.
I think that as we dig into this, I think that we need to start thinking about the science of play not just being the neuroscience of play, but the emotional, cognitive, social science of
Hmm.
play, the aesthetics of play, the sociology of play. And I think as we start to bring that, I think our it will enrich our understanding of play, and then I think that play can really rise to a cultural, level with education, with art, with
Right.
sport, with all these other things where we just sort of say
Hmm.
like, yeah, these are a part of civilization. It's an important part of who we are. Um, so yeah, final word is more to be done.
All
TBD.
right. I think that's an awesome way to end. Thanks so much.